Thank you very much. E ngā mana, e ngā reo, e ngā iwi o te motu, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Growing up, most children are accustomed to fairy tales or superheroes, but my elders fed me the stories of our Indigenous people, and two of those stories stood out for me most of all. The first was Ngā Whanua, the warrior goddess. Her victories on the battlefield helped create the 4 highest-ranking chiefly titles in my country. And secondly, the first ever tattoos were worn by women, but are now more commonly associated with men. You see, contrary to public opinion, gender equality is not a new phenomenon. It is the bread and butter of Indigenous people and has been for thousands of years. In the Indian culture, a trans woman is still used today to bless newborn babies in Hindu rituals. I have long believed that we hold the key to understanding power and its relation with gender, because for thousands of years we practiced gender fluidity and gender neutrality. And then, of course, there was the arrival of European missionaries and the subsequent colonization. They said to a trans woman, "You are sexually promiscuous, ungodly, and undermine the nature of our families. You should be banished from the village and hidden in darkness." To our women who used to fight on the battlefields, they said, "Your place is in the home. You should be seen and never heard from." You see, European colonization has redesigned how Indigenous people see gender and sexuality. And now they have the audacity to say that we are primitive, bigotry, and that we help project this fear of homophobia. Yet they were the ones that brought homophobia into our villages. They brought misogyny into our villages in the name of Christianity, in the name of prosperity and progress and development and all of these buzzwords that had no meaning at all to the people in the village at that time. So I want to challenge you when people talk about gender equality, ask them, but where does it come from? Who had it first? Who was practicing it for thousands of years? And the answer to that is Indigenous people. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres prioritizes Indigenous people for climate change. But what he doesn't do is prioritize Indigenous people for gender equality, when we've been doing it all along. If there is an expert on gender equality, it is indeed Indigenous people. We know best because our women and our trans women have been doing it for as long as we remember. They helped create the fabric of Indigenous culture and identity. We should be learning from them in climate change as much as gender equality, and we should be challenging how we see power and who owns it. You see, ladies and gentlemen, power is an interesting concept because those who have it most deny those who have it least of all. My challenge to all of you in all of these rooms and spaces that Women Deliver is to ask, who's not in the room and why? Whose stories are we not hearing from and why? Ladies and gentlemen, every year hundreds of Indigenous languages are dying. Our cultures are dying. Our identity is dying. And until we hold those in power accountable for what they have done to our people, we will never go forward. So in these spaces that you occupy over this next 2 or 3 days, I want you to ask those questions. I want you to ask, where are the Pacific women? There is not a single Pacific woman on any plenary at Women Deliver. And yet we have the lowest representation in Parliament worldwide. But sadly, we also have the highest gender-based violence figures in the world. If anyone should be speaking on the plenary, it is our Pacific women who come from the most deprived areas of gender equality on this earth. And yet, unfortunately, they weren't good enough to deserve a seat on the plenary. Australia is hosting, or in the bidding rather, to host the next Women Deliver, and it is my hope and dream that we can elevate the status of Pacific women and Pacific trans women so that their voices and their stories are captured, but more importantly, so that we understand and credit traditional knowledge and Indigenous people going forward, because it is intellectual property and gender equality that's missing. Indigenous people own gender equality in our own way, and that's not being honored, that's not being respected, and I think enough is enough. The time is now to understand why Indigenous people are so underrepresented, why we're so marginalized, why we're so left out of the room. It's because our power has been denied to us, and it's because those in power are not ready to give it to us. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy Women Deliver. Nō reira, tēnā koutou. tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa.
Thank you, Fale. You are speaking truth to power. You're
Thank you.
seeing power everywhere, including, of course, also for us who are behind the conference, Women Deliver.
Yes.
And we all need to hear from the voices. If we haven't listened well enough, if we haven't included everyone in the room, as you say, it's a good way of seeing who has power, who is not in the room, who is in the room. So thank you for that.
Welcome.
And let me ask you how you will continue and how will you use your power, because you have power, you're here on the stage. That is taking power, and it's a powerful speech you gave us. But how will you use your power to achieve what you just talked about?
Thank you very much. I come from a culture that's very communal. It's very collective. And in my culture, you don't stand alone. We have a saying in my language, nobody stands like a mountain. And what that means is that I have a responsibility in my own privilege. As you said, I'm a speaker here. And that privilege allows me to invite others from the Indigenous communities into these settings, into these spaces, into these rooms. I don't stand here alone. I stand on the shoulders of my ancestors. I stand on the shoulders of my grandparents and my parents. And that's what I bring to this conversation. I'm more concerned about who's not in the room rather than who's already in the room. Because that's how you extend power, that's how you give power to those who don't already have it, that's how you make social justice more realistic. Because when we talk about social justice, what do we really mean? It's about having conversations with those who are not in the room, engaging those who need it most of all. And you'll find that Indigenous people are on all of this, negative statistics. We are overrepresented in the prison populations all over the Western world. We're overrepresented in obesity, we're overrepresented in diabetes, we're overrepresented in crime and violence. Our people are suffering. And until we're in the room, until we're on stage, until we're having these, power dynamics change, that will never change. And so the key for me is, how do we use this power to benefit those who don't already have it? And that's what I'll be taking away from Women Deliver.
And we'll take away your message to us in Women Deliver.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. A big round of applause for Fale.